us, our mission, and what student accessibility services, or oftentimes we refer to ourselves as SAS, is disabilities and accessibilities, the different types, descriptors, our services, accommodation, and the accommodation request process, rather, our resources, contact information, location hours, and our transition video series.
And we will be doing what we call synchronized speaking. So you will hear both of our voices on and off throughout this presentation. We like to both talk to you and make you feel welcome.
Of course. Okay, so a little bit about SAS. So, like I said before, Laura Chouanier is our director. I am the assistant director, Catherine Zimmerman, and then our administrative assistant is Patsy Almonte.
And many of you will have had contact with Patsy as your initial point of contact. If you've called SAS or if you have emailed with Patsy. So if you come to campus, we invite you to come in and meet all of us.
Of course, you're welcome anytime. Okay, so a little bit about SAS. So I like to describe CSAS as an umbrella. This is, so if you think of the tip of an umbrella, at the top is Center for Student Academic and Success, which all different offices are, the ones that are branching off of that overarching office. So one of the offices under CSAS is SAS, which is us, Student Accessibility Services. There is the Tutoring Center, the Advising and Peer Mentorship Office, and the International Student and Scholar Initiatives Office. We are all located in the main library. We'll talk a little bit more about exactly where our office, SAS, is located, but we're on the first floor. And students with disabilities who choose to register with our office make up approximately 14% of the Roger Williams student population. And we believe that the most successful students are self-advocates who identify their own needs, and they take personal initiative in problem solving and decision making as well.
And I'll add that we include this middle bullet for you because a lot of times students will tell us that once they leave high school, they no longer wish to connect with an office that provides services for students with disabilities. They want to, try it now independently and leave the support services at home, or they don't want to feel like they're different than their college peers. But we encourage students to feel comfortable connecting with us for a couple of reasons. One is that they're not alone. 14% of the entire population, again, it's not an insignificant number. And students in that 14% will use SAS services at different types of contact levels. Some come into our office often, some only use accommodations. But we also want students to know that to be a self-advocate, to identify your needs and take ownership of your learning and getting the accommodations that you need to be successful like you were in high school is a logical transition so that supports that helped you be successful in high school aren't just stopped once you get to the university level. And we, again, want students to know that there's no stigma attached. At the college level, students are really all concerned about being successful and doing what they need to do as individuals to be successful. And for 14% of those students, connecting with our office is part of that plan. So we want you to feel that you're part of a strong cohort of students on campus who recognize that receiving help, connecting with resources is what helps a successful college student be successful. So that's why we find those two bullet points really important for our incoming first year students.
It's an excellent point, Laura. Okay, so in regards to that, our responsibilities and mission are to, number one, make the Roger Williams University community welcoming to all identities, and to also make the community accessible and equitable to all identities. So going along with what Laura said, lowering or getting rid of that stigma would be excellent. That's the ultimate goal, but making sure that our students, no matter who they are, if they're registered with our office or not, that they are welcomed. Everything is accessible and equitable to everyone. Laura, do you want to add anything?
No, I loved what you said. It's perfect.
Okay. All right. So disabilities and accessibility. So this is a list that we compiled of different disabilities that we service and that we work with. This list is absolutely non-exhaustive. This is more of students that we work with on a more day-to-day basis or is more common to our office. So the different types are learning disabilities, ADHD, mobility impairments, excuse me, visual impairments, deaf and hard of hearing, psychiatric conditions, chronic medical conditions, the neurodiverse populations, which might be included with autism, spectrum disorders, all of that, whatever is diagnosed at the time. So it could be Asperger's, different things like that.
And we respond to things as they become more well-known in our overall national culture too. So recently, there's been a lot more understanding of concussions and how concussions can lead to a post-concussive syndrome and how that sometimes can become severe enough to be considered a TBI. And there are also other things such as Lyme disease, when we started to really understand about 10 years ago or so what Lyme disease was and how it also had a neurological and learning impact. And of course, mental health situations, we understand more and more about PTSD and other types of situations that will impact a student's efforts to be independent and focused and successful college students. So as Catherine said, this is not the complete list by any means. And within each bullet, there are other categories of different types of disabilities which do fall under that. So again, sometimes students will say, well, I don't see my disability on that list. And we say, well, not to worry, we are still here for you. So this is just sort of a overbroad sweep. And we always try to remind our community that not every disability is visible, and the majority of them aren't visible at all. So we encourage awareness and compassion at all times for accessibility and inclusion.
Yep.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah. So each disability is, individualized, and also too with COVID pandemic, who knows what's going to come about from that. So we're always on the up and up with, adapting and adjusting to equitable practices. So that's kind of the takeaway from this slide. All right, so accommodations are not intended to guarantee success. A lot of times we hear, you need to make my student successful, or, the student wants to be successful, which is great. We are so happy that you're aiming, to be successful, and, we're going to try to get you there. But accommodations are not intended to guarantee success. They are intended to level the playing field so that students have equal and equitable access to their educational and residential environments. So we wanted to include this picture of these human beings, and the difference between equality and equity. So as you can see on the equality side, every being gets one crate to step on to try to reach an apple, quote unquote. But obviously, everybody is different heights and has different abilities, so it doesn't actually make them reach the apple. Whereas the equity side, everybody gets what they need, which, one person might need 3 crates, or another person might need 1 crate, or one might need 2, but they can all reach the apple equitably.
And that's our goal, to help each student have an apple.
Mm-hmm. That's right. All right, so the SAS process initiation. So students are not required by law to disclose a disability to any party on campus unless they are seeking support in receipt of academic or residential accommodations. And the asterisk to this is, you can talk to a professor, or your student can talk to a professor about, their disability. But if they want official accommodations that every professor, going forward has to abide by, they have to come through our office. So students can inquire about services at any time during the year. Although, students are encouraged to inquire pre-semester or early in the semester, so they're good to go for the rest of such. Students must submit disability-related documentation and self-disclosure information to the SAS office before requesting accommodations through Clockwork, which Clockwork is just an online portal that we use for our online file system.
We're trying to go paperless.
Yes.
So Clockwork Clockwork allows us to communicate with students and faculty members all electronically, and it also allows all of the student documentation to be held within an electronic format. So papers are not being sent through the US mail or scanned, and our office will then have just fewer papers, and hopefully we'll kill less trees. So Clockwork is our effort to streamline not only the communication process and the record keeping process, but also to keep as paper free as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now we're going to walk you through what you're going to be seeing as your student is going through this process. So the first step is to go to our website. So you can just Google RWU SAS, and it's one of the first links that will come up. And this is our landing page. So you'll see that it's us, it's the Jeremy Warnick Center for Student Accessibility, our email, phone number, location, all that good stuff. So if you scroll down this page, you'll actually at the bottom see two blue, and you click on them and they drop down. And you'll click on the first one, or your student will click on the first one, where it says students new to SAS complete the intake process. And
And I
as
just want
you,
to, I'll
oh,
jump in, Catherine. When Catherine just said you or your student, we understand a lot of families will fill this intake process out together. But going forward, the more you can encourage your student to work with these kinds of systems independently, you are giving them great tools for independent learning and self-advocacy. So while this initial intake process is often done together, because again, it's new, students may need some family insights and to help them answer our questions. But again, we just want to encourage family members to give students the tools they need to be independent, and then let them do a lot of this electronic work in all of the different platforms we have on campus independently, because every time you solve the problem for your student, it denies them an opportunity to learn how to solve a problem. So I apologize for cutting you off, Catherine, but as she said, you will start, new students will start at that top blue bar where it says students new to SAS, complete the intake process. And the next slide shows you where you'll then go.
mhm. Right. So there's a lot of text on that first drop down menu. So I put a little green star in which, you should read all of the text, but the link that you're going to be looking for to have your student complete the intake process is, where that star is, where it says RW SAS portal. And to reiterate what Laura said, encouraging, your student to complete this independently is helping them build their self-advocacy skills. All right, so, and then that's the bottom portion of that textual area where it just talks about, individualized, files and planning for students regarding our office and contact information. All right, so when you click on that link, or when your student clicks on that link, they're going to land on this Clockwork homepage. So there's a couple of different things that we're going to be talking about on this homepage and what happens with each. So I've labeled them here. We're going to do the top row first and then the second row, and it's split between two slides. So number one is the initial registration. So that is the first step where the student will go to formally request accommodations. So there's a questionnaire, which again, I'll show you momentarily. There's a questionnaire and spaces to upload supporting documentation, at which point they'll submit it to us. We review their file, approve or deny for accommodations based on all of that submitted. Number two is requesting accommodations each semester. So the student will go in each semester and they will click through. It gives them almost like a checklist, and they can check off which accommodations they would like for which class, because depending upon the classes or what they've been approved for, it might depend on which one they would want to utilize for each. And then after that, they'll click that they there's some agreements text that they have to agree with regarding our policies and procedures. They submit it, and then a letter is sent out electronically to their professors. And in that letter is just their name, ID number, and their approved accommodations. It does not talk about area of disability or specific disability or anything like that. Number three is to schedule a test or exam. This is the process for scheduling to take tests or exams in SAS, along with different accommodations like extended time on exams or things like that. And it's important to note this needs to be done for each test or exam. It has to happen every single time. It's not just like a one-shot deal each semester like number two was. It has to be every test or exam.
And just to do a quick review, number one, the initial registration, one time only, one and done. Point two, requesting accommodations. It happens once each semester, or if you change your schedule and pick up a new class, you'd want to go in and request accommodations for your new class. So that's generally once a semester. Number three, every time there's a test or quiz. And so this is where a lot of students just if this system will become second nature after a while. But if you just think of it as, once I've done the registration, I'm done with that. Each semester, once all my faculty members have received the request for accommodations, number 2, I'm done with that. But it's bullet 3, every time there's a test or quiz, you must request it in their Clockwork portal at least 3 days prior to the test, so that the faculty member has time to get the test uploaded into Clockwork. So one and done for the registration, once each semester for number 2, and then for number 3, each time there's a test or quiz that you want to receive an accommodation for.
Mhm.
So,
Great. Good points, Laura. All
okay.
right. So we are on to the second row. So number 4 is activate and retrieve notes. So if you have been approved, there's emphasis on that. If you've been approved for a note-taking accommodation, this is the link to activate your request and retrieve your uploaded notes. So what you need to do is, if you are approved for a note-taking accommodation, you go into this link, you click that you would like your notes for a specific class. So you basically turn the light switch on, you want your notes. And then, as a note taker is selected in your class, they will upload their notes, and that's where you will retrieve them.
You'll go back to push pin item number 4, and your notes will be there waiting for you, because a note taker in your class has used item number 5. They've gone into number 5, the note taker portal, and from there, that's where they've uploaded their notes.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, so Laura described number 5, so that one's pretty straightforward. And then number 6, this is not actually it's not currently in use. We utilize another system for alt text textbooks, or alt format textbooks rather. So stay tuned if we, change that, but we just wanted to let you know that that is not currently an active link or usage.
As Catherine said, there is another system that we use. So we do provide alt format textbooks. We provide them as PDFs. We provide them as MP3s if a student just needs the audio portion. But we do use another tool that's connected to the Bridges platform. And we should mention too that all of this information about Bridges, the alt text formats, and using Clockwork will be repeated for incoming freshman students, first-year students, and new transfer students at the beginning of the fall semester in late August, just before classes start. So stay tuned. More information will be sent to you about when and where you can attend that session. So all of this will be repeated for students. So don't distress if you've missed a point. We'll be repeating this.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So the initial registration process. So we're going into, let me actually go back for you all. Oh, there we go. So now we're going to be reviewing item number 1. So what would happen is, if a student were to click into number 1. So at first they'll fill out their first name, last name, student ID number, and their email. There's a couple of intake questionnaires. So the first one is, what is the name of your medical condition or disability? Number 2 is briefly describe the condition or disability that impacts you in an educational environment. So sample impacts, please describe mobility, seeing, hearing, concentration, reading, managing stress, digestive, allergy, etc. Number 3 is, how does your condition or disability impact you in the physical or residential environment? Number 4 is, what accommodations, supports, or services have helped you in the past? It looks like number 5 got cut off, but what will be your educational goal is what it says. Number 6, what will be your major or program of study? Number 7, any other goals that you have? Or number 8, any other needs or concerns?
And some students feel that they don't know how much to say. They're not sure how to answer this. So it's okay. Give us whatever information you can, and then we will always welcome you to come meet with us for face-to-face conversation where that same information can be added into your file later on. So do your best to provide that information for us, but it's okay if your answers are brief. We don't need 500-word essays for each response. We just want to know a bit about you in your own words, because a lot of times the documentation that we read doesn't have your voice in it. So these questions allow you to let us know a bit about yourself in your own words, because you've said it yourself or typed it out. And then number 9 here, Catherine is showing us the area where you can upload files of your documentation. And the documentation guidelines will also tell you the kinds of things we're looking for. So generally 504 plans, IEPs, stay home, but we'll take and look for the information that created those forms. And I think we have information on the next slide, so I don't want to preempt the next slide.
Yes, we do. All right, so documentation. So like Laura alluded to, this page is about documentation. So documentation should provide insight into a student's specific diagnoses. Receipt of documentation is the first step in accessing SAS services or applying for requesting accommodations rather. For learning differences, psychoeducational assessments must be conducted by a licensed professional, so like psychologist, psychiatrist, neurologist, etc. It must be 4 years older or newer. The little asterisk is, if you do have that documentation and it is older, you can still pass it in to us. It will just be kind of like a sub-secondary supportive documentation. And it must be on a professional's letterhead and contain a signature. Generally speaking, IEPs, 504 plans, standardized testing accommodations, learning plans alone are not considered sufficient documentation, though these pieces of documentation may help support the different diagnostic reports. More complex disabilities require more significant and applicable documentation. So like we said, these alone are not considered sufficient documentation, so they can absolutely be secondary. So we highly encourage submitting 504 IEPs, et cetera, et cetera. Medical and, oh, yep, go ahead, Laura.
I was just going to say some plans, I have seen some plans, some 504s, where the actual psychoed assessment is embedded within that. So if the plan that the high school created embeds the documentation and the information from the WACE, again, with the diagnostician's information, that also could be considered acceptable. So we just need to know, again, what is the impact? What is the disability? What is the specific impact on your student or yourself? And based on that impact, what accommodations must be put into place to provide equal access?
Right.
And that's, oh, that was the last bullet.
That was the last bullet. Nice job. All right. So moving on from documentation to helpful resources. So our office SAS is one of the many services and resources available to RWU students. I often tell students, as students come in and they work with our office, they might be used to, a special ed teacher being able to do almost everything for them. That's not the case with our office, but we are able to point you in the right direction or to a specific person that can, help with whatever you're seeking. So that's how I always kind of describe it to students or even parents that inquire about that. So a lot of the offices that we work very closely with, we work with almost every office on campus, but the ones we work with more frequently are tutorial support services, advising and peer mentorship, Office of Student and Family Assistance, the Counseling Center, the Center for Career and Professional Development, Health and Wellness, Athletics, etc. The list, again, is non-exhaustive.
I'll say our contact with faculty is all driven by student request and need. So there is no ongoing faculty contact between the SAS office and faculty members about students' needs. So SAS really communicates just with the student. And if there are circumstances that really call for an SAS contact with a faculty member, it would only be because there's a specific issue that a student needs help navigating, and the student has asked us to intervene or help them communicate better with their faculty members. So the student information that we work with in SAS is purely driven by what the student brings to us. So the student, again, and that's why we call ourselves a service-based model as opposed to a programmatic model, because we are a service like all of these services on this list that students can choose to work with if they wish to. There's no additional fee for services for working with SAS, and a student can supply us with documentation, but unless they communicate with us either by coming in and talking or using the Clockwork portal, there will be no communication with the student's faculty or with the student unless they generate all of that support. So again, that's why faculty is not on that list, because it's really not something that this office communicates with on a regular basis.
Mhm. Yep. Perfect. And speaking of communication, we have transition video series that is, talks a little bit more in depth about this process of transitioning from high school or, a prep program, whatever it might be, to Roger Williams University slash college in general. So that's actually on our website. So again, if you go back to that landing page, right on the left hand side, there's a bar right on the side, a menu bar, and it will say transition video series. And you will click on that, and it's a 5 series. Or 5 video series, session series that you can watch, and each session has different themes in which they're described on the title. So the first one is obviously coming to Roger Williams University to talk about us and what we do, generally speaking. And then it gets a little bit more specific to, how to access accommodations or request accommodations in series 5. So everything in between kind of goes along chronologically in a sense with what you'll experience going forward. Laura, did you want to add anything?
No, that was great. Just thank you for watching those if you have time to watch videos 1 through 5.
Yeah.
Thanks, Catherine.
They'll probably answer a lot of your questions. That's why we made them. All right. So reminders, if a student is planning on requesting housing accommodations, please note that the deadline for submitting their request is July 8th. Requesting and using accommodations or academic accommodations rather that were helpful in K through 12 is a great way to transition to college level academics. That's huge. We stress that. And remember, you are not alone. We are all here to help and encourage you. Laura, anything to add?
No, just the welcome, and please come in, come often, come early. We'll be here with you till the day you step in as a first-year student, till the day you graduate.
Right. All right. So speaking of stepping into our office, Laura, you're just leading the way with these transitions. So again, we are Student Accessibility Services, SAS. We're the Jeremy Warnick Center for Student Accessibility. We are in the library, which is the big clock tower on main campus. Walk in the doors, head to the left. There's going to be a row of printers, and I think it's a red or orange wall. Walk through that threshold past the bathrooms, and that's where our office is. It's very easy and accessible to get to. Our phone number here is 401-254-3841. Our email is sas@rwu.edu. Our hours, Monday through Friday, are 7:45 to 5 p.m. Over the summer during, Laura, if you want to correct me, is it July? We have half days on Fridays.
Yes.
Yeah, except for obviously orientation days.
Yes.
Yeah. So just you can stay posted on our website for our hours or just email us, which leads me, I transitioned myself to the next slide. So this is our contact information. So it's just the first letter of our first name and our full last name at rwu.edu. Mine is a little bit different. It has my middle initial because there's another K Zimmerman on campus. So just make sure you have that E in my email if you're contacting me. Email us anytime. It's probably the best way to catch us. And that's it. So we don't have any questions, but we wanted to thank you so much for listening to this video and our lovely voices. And again, please contact us if you have any questions, concerns, comments, etc. Laura, any closing words for you?
Simply a thank you for listening. Thank you for being a Roger Williams student with us. We look forward to working with you, and we wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.